Now then, guys, welcome back to the Cycle Sunday podcast. Mr. Bowker, how's sunny Edinburgh today? Or is it sunny, actually?
It's very sunny, and the temperature is in double figures.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I've been gutted today because I've had loads of stuff to do, and most of it's meant I can't be outside. So it has been a beautiful day here today,
Yes.
which kind of brings us on to the subject for this evening's podcast. But before we get stuck into that,
Yes.
exciting news on the e-bike front.
Yes.
Mrs. Petrolped's e-bike is imminent.
It is built. It is ready. It's got a full tank of electricity.
Excellent. So she's very, very excited. She even asked this morning, when am I getting my bike? And the answer to that is in a couple of weeks' time, because as we mentioned last week, Paul now does a nationwide delivery service for any bike over 2,000 quid.
Yep.
And, well, Tracy's e-bike is over 2,000 quid, and you're delivering it for us in a couple of weeks' time.
We are, and I'm really, really excited. And do you mind ever so much, Peter, if I do a bit of a shout out?
We like shout outs.
Yeah, because as we said last week, we've just got a new delivery van, and that joins the Criterium Cycles van fleet of 2. And in addition to that, we need to obviously make sure the bikes are nicely secured, but we can maximize the number of bikes in there that make sure they don't meet as you're traveling.
They don't rub into each other.
Rubbing together, sort of having a cuddle. Let's not do that with bikes in the back of the van. So we want to make sure that everything's delivered safely, but it's also got to be efficient as well. And a few years ago now, at the last Birmingham NEC cycle show, we came across a company called Bike Stow, and Stow being STOW. So you'll just be able to Google Bike Stow. And I saw these things, and they are a CNC wooden framework that houses the wheel and holds the bike upright, and you just literally ratchet strap them into the back of your van. So they're incredibly light, easy to fold away when you're not using them. But we approached them at the beginning of this week, and at full disclosure, we paid what you pay for these things because I just think they're absolutely fantastic. And Julie, who looked after me, has been probably one of the most responsive companies I have dealt with for ages. She was just an absolute delight. It's a real garage to growth business. And yeah, check them out, Bike Stow, and yeah, we'll put some photos up on Instagram when we get them set up, and that is what is going to be securing Tracy's bike in the back of Jasper on the way down to you in a couple of weeks' time,
mate. And we'll be doing a bit of a film for Series 2 of Cycle Sunday of the delivery as well. So
yes, indeed,
yeah. We like giving shout outs to companies that do a good job, especially if they're British companies and they're kind of, customer service and all that. It's isn't it funny? Customer service, it's not a difficult thing, but not many companies get it right.
No, and it's one of those things that if you as a customer, so if you remember, I was a customer in this situation. I was also understanding to the fact that I didn't want a discount, I didn't want a deal. I just wanted the right thing to do the right job, and I felt that what they charged for the product was really fair. But the way that the product arrived, the way it was packaged, the way that it was machined and assembled, when you take it out of the box and you go, do you know what I paid for that product, that was a real fair price. So it's just a bit of a nod to not always the cheapest price and not always the biggest discount you get is the best way of doing things.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Now then, on to the subject of tonight's podcast, which is
Yes.
we've got a few things to cover actually, but
Yes.
the thing that spurred us on, we were talking earlier, and with it being so sunny and so beautiful, hopefully that is going to spur people on to get out on their bikes.
Yes.
Especially as it's not wet and windy and horrible. So, because there is nothing nicer than cycling on your bike on a nice, warm, sunny day.
Yeah.
But we were thinking about, you need to get your bike ready for your bike rides, but you
Yeah.
need to get yourself ready as well.
Yes.
And I'm not for 1 minute suggesting we're all going to go out there and do, I don't know, a stage of the Tour de France or anything. But,
Yeah.
if you're going to start increasing your distance on the bike, the time you spend on the bike, then you kind of need to get your body ready for it. And we're going to try in this podcast to just have a chat across the spectrum of, if you like, bike rider capability. Because I've no doubt the serious club cyclists and the kind of reasonably serious cyclists have probably spent all winter on their turbo, and they're out there smashing the miles. But it may well be that someone's had the bike in the shed over the winter and they've given it a bit of a clean up and a bit of a service, and they're going to start doing some cycling.
Yeah.
And there are right ways and wrong ways of approaching that to help you carry on doing it throughout the summer and not putting yourself off after the first ride.
Yes. Yes.
And I guess it's start gently.
Yeah, I fully agree. And when we were talking about this topic, and it's one of those things that guys, this is actually a planned.
What? Unlike last week.
No, we're actually on topic tonight. We see it all the time. We see folk who have not ridden a bike for a number of years and is wanting to get back into cycling, whether it just be for the family, leisure, getting some fresh air. We see folk who have been committed cyclists, but for whatever reason, work, family, it doesn't matter. Whatever reason, they've had a couple of years off the bike and now they're wanting to get back onto it. And then we're also seeing people who have had a really good session on the bikes and they're wanting to take their cycling up to the next level. So on a daily basis, we are speaking to people at real ends of the spectrum. And it's a joy. It's an absolute joy to be able to talk to people and use our experience. And when we say our experience, people automatically think that somebody in a bike shop is the world's best cyclist in the world. I can assure you, there are some absolutely fantastic cyclists in bike shops. But the guy who you're just looking at down the lens or listening to on the through your speakers at the moment is somebody who has done 30 years of cycling, but for the last 18 months, because we've been so busy in the store, I've virtually done zero cycling. So cast my mind back to July 2019 when I did the Marmot, which was 113 miles with 5,000 meters or nearly 16,000 feet of vertical ascent in 10 hours and 34 minutes. That same person just 18 months later is 20 kilos heavier, hasn't ridden a bike much, and now is struggling with more than about an hour and a quarter on his e-bike. So, this isn't you as an individual. This is every squishy organic person out there goes through what we call the body adaptation of going from zero cycling to a bit of cycling to more cycling to consistent cycling. And it is a process. It is not an overnight thing.
Yeah. And I guess, the most obvious place to start from a kind of pain stroke comfort point of view is your bum and the saddle.
Yes.
Because,
yeah,
a bike saddle is not a Range Rover seat. It's a well designed. Or sorry, let me rephrase that. They can be very well designed to be anatomically correct for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
However, so my road bike saddle, when I've been riding a lot, I don't even notice I'm sat on it. But if I
Sure.
haven't ridden for 6 months and I go out after an hour, it's bloody painful.
Correct.
And I guess the biggest, I got a friend of mine who was getting a problem with his, wasn't comfortable on his saddle, so he went and bought one of those big gel pads for his saddle, like, and I'm like,
Yeah.
mate, no,
No.
don't do that.
Yeah.
Cycle more.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
You don't put a big gel saddle, and it was a massive, great big thing. But yeah, no. So it's bum, and then probably for me on a road bike, it's kind of shoulders and hands. Just
Yeah.
you start getting pins and needles or heavy hands, and it's just because you're not used to being sat there.
Yes.
But my biggest challenge is, so when I went out the other week in Cornwall, in my head, I'm the guy. By the way, it was 4 years ago today that me and Dan did Ventoux 3 times. So it's a bit like with you in the Marmot.
Yes.
And I couldn't do one ascent of Ventoux right now if I tried.
No.
But
No.
in my head, I'm still the guy that did 3 times at Ventoux in a day.
Yes.
So when I go out on a bike ride, I think, well, I've got to do 30 miles. I can't do more than, or I can't do less than 2 hours.
Yeah.
And if I do less than 2 hours, in my head, I think, oh, that's not very good. But actually, when you're trying to get back out on your bike in the early part of the spring, summer, it's probably a better idea to do, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 times a week, 10 to 15 miles, than trying to do 50 miles on a Sunday and killing yourself.
Peter.
Uh-oh, yes.
Amen to that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So when you've completely nailed it. So that's 2 people who are presenting a cycling podcast, who love the bikes, who really take the bike riding really seriously. We absolutely love being
Athletes,
on our bikes.
Mate, we're athletes.
We're just Adonises, frankly.
How's that red wine, by the way?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. No, it's so important. And when we have customers who come in and they come in to buy the first hybrid bike or the first sort of basic mountain bike, and they're wanting to get back into cycling, we just turn around and we say, look, rather than the biggest mistake that people make is the first ride that they do is, right, I've got a brand new bike. Life's going to be great now. Because obviously I've spent 500, 600, 7,000 pounds. It doesn't matter what the figure is.
I am Chris Froome. Let's go.
Yeah. And that bike is going to be my ticket to being able to do 100 miles comfortably, right? No, at the moment you've just bought a Ferrari 488, but it's still got a Fiat Punto engine in it. Yeah. So you've got to tune that engine. You've got to tune the body to be able to ride the chassis that you are sat on. And it is the most critical thing. So whenever somebody buys a brand new bike and they've not ridden a bike for a period of time, irrespective of what that bike is, we always say, I'd rather you find a really lovely 5 to 10K loop and go and do that 3 to 4 times a week. And always, this is the key, always put the bike back in the garage with your mind saying, I wanted to do more. Because if your head is saying, do you know what, I feel as though I could have gone another lap, put the bike away immediately. Don't go and do that extra lap, because 60 to 70% of you getting on the bike in the first place starts in your head. And if you, in your head, you are turning around saying, I want to go and do that again, you will do that 3 to 4 times a week, and your body will adapt brilliantly to that.
Yeah.
If the first ride you go and do is 30 miles, the thing I can absolutely guarantee is you will not touch that bike again for 3 to 4 weeks. And even then, your head will be going, maybe I don't want to go out on the bike again.
It hurt last time.
It hurt last time.
Yeah.
Top
Yeah,
tip.
because I don't. Now, this might sound really daft. You will get to a point. Well, maybe not everybody. Maybe this is just me. I got to a point where I actually really liked going out on bike rides that hurt. That's why I like climbing mountains on a bike.
Yeah.
But I only like that after I've trained for it, and I've trained to hurt.
Yes.
Um,
That's not just you. That's normal.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when you go to a dark place
Yes.
on a mountain
Yes.
and you get to the top, it's I often get asked, why you cycled up, the Tourmalet or Mont Ventoux? Yeah, I have. Why? And my answer is, I don't really know why, because I can't explain to you how I felt when I overcame the dark place I went through, the pain cave that I had to endure. But when I got to the top, it felt amazing.
Yes.
And I think, you don't want to do that the first time you get on your bike.
No.
Because so I guess for people, we're not. This isn't a podcast on I don't know, training.
No.
But the first thing, if you're fairly new to cycling and just want to get healthy and fit, I guess the first thing you need to do is maybe just cycle frequently and often. You don't worry about how fast you're going or how many calories you're burning or how much effort you're putting in, how many watts you're pushing. It doesn't matter. Just frequent and often, get your body tuned in.
Yeah.
And then I guess it's a bit like running, really. Then there are things you can do to make you go further and or faster.
Yes.
And but that's, you need to worry about that. That's on like page 15 of the manual. You need to read the first couple of pages first.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's really helpful, Peter. And don't worry that you at this moment in time are enjoying 5K and all the people who you meet and talk to are comfortable at 60K.
Yeah.
That it's that same person who is today comfortable at 60K was in your position when they started.
Yeah.
It isn't you. It is every single person who rides a bicycle. It is exercise. And I think that's why Couch to 5K exists. It's because not everybody can go out and run a marathon. You've run a marathon, Peter. You trained for it. You worked hard at it. But fundamentally, you already had a base fitness to be able to do it. When you did your 3 times of Ventoux, you didn't do that as your first ride, right?
No.
You did that. If that was 4 years ago, you started riding properly about 11 years ago, but you started riding after a good running stint. So that base fitness and that understanding of how to work through niggles and work through feeding and nutrition and hydration and understanding that things can get uncomfortable before they get comfortable again, you already had firmly in your mindset. Whereas for some people, they're just looking for nirvana. And I actually think that the bike industry and the running industry, well, any sporting industry at the moment is selling it too wrong, in the fact that they're using terminology like comfortable. It's what does Keith call it? It's basically sort of you need to work through the discomfort in order to find the comfort. And I think that's what you were talking about that dark place that you get into.
Yeah. I think, I mean, a couple of things. Personally, I think anybody can run a marathon.
Yes.
But the only way you're going to do it is if you put your mind to the fact, I'm going to run a marathon. It's in your head, not your body.
Yeah.
And I don't get me wrong. If someone's particularly overweight, or they've got a medical condition, or something that will prevent them. For sure, that I know
yeah,
it's not everybody, but
sure, sure.
it starts with, I'm going to do something. So
Mm,
one of my things, and I struggle with the motivation sometimes to go out on my bike, or certainly in the winter to get on the turbo trainer and stuff.
mm,
The way I motivate myself, and I didn't do it last year because of COVID,
yeah,
is I always at the beginning of the year enter some kind of sportive or ride if it's cycling, or or fun run or run if it's running,
yeah,
um, towards the back end of the summer to motivate myself to get on my bike. If I
yeah,
know I've got a target, let's say in September, I know I've entered a 100-mile sportif,
yeah,
then I need to. That's the motivation for me to get off my bum and get on my
hmm,
bike.
yeah,
And I would, if anybody wants to, I don't know, increase their fitness, or increase the distance they want to run, that is
mm,
the best motivator ever. And I don't think I've ever told you this story. My sister once said to me, this is a few years ago now. She said, I'm really jealous. You do all these challenges. You've run a marathon, and you've done a Olympic distance triathlon, and you've done these bike rides. I could never do that. And I said, yes, you can. I
yeah,
said, you just have to, you know, so this was at Christmas time. I said, right, next year, you and I are going to run 10K together.
yeah,
And she's like, I can't do that. I said, yes, you can.
mm,
And we started off with little bits of walking, and we increased the distance with the walking. And then we did a bit of walking and running, and then slowly running. And to cut a very long story short, we ended up running the Great South Run together, which is
yeah.
actually 10 miles, not
Wow.
10K.
Okay.
And we did it. She didn't stop. She ran the whole way, and she smashed it.
Yeah.
And at the end, we had many, many tears and big hugs. And I
Yes.
said, "I
Yes.
told you you could do it."
Yeah.
So, if you want to go out there and do a longer bike ride, find a. There's so many sportifs, and so I think the word sportif, I don't think that's particularly helpful, because it makes it sound like it's a race or a competition or something. So
Mm,
maybe find a charity bike ride or something that's going on. And the reason I wanted to do this podcast on this subject now is, I think with the restrictions lifting and stuff,
yeah.
I know Parkrun's not quite started yet, because Parkrun will only start when every single parkrun venue can operate. Otherwise, they're
Yes.
worried about people going to other ones and it getting crowded.
Right.
So if I'm sure we'll start to see the return of organised bike rides,
Yes.
sportives,
Yes.
um, later on in the summer,
Yeah.
and therefore people can get enter one and work towards it. And most sportives have a range of distances. They'll have a mid route, or short route, a mid route, and a long route,
Yeah.
and they're brilliant ways to motivate yourself,
Yeah.
get fit, meet other
Yeah.
people,
Yes.
maximize your lovely bike that you've just bought, and
Mm,
bond with it. And
yes.
I
Yes.
don't know about you, but I I don't think I'll ever sell any of my bikes, because each one of them has got some kind of very, very heavily burnt in memory of something I've done. And I think when you do an
Yes.
event like that, you bond with your bike, and it's a fantastic thing.
It is. It is. And I think the other thing to pull from that as well is, it doesn't have to be an event. I think one of the key things that I pulled out from your lovely story with your sister is it's actually about camaraderie, friendship, and other people.
Hmm?
So if your motivation is to get on your bike to go and share experiences with, you don't have to go and do a sportif. You don't have to go and do an organised bike ride. But find a club, find a bike club. I
Yeah,
used to play. I used to play badminton quite a lot. I absolutely love badminton, and I wasn't particularly good at it, but I used to go down to the badminton club every Tuesday night or something after school. And I did it because I met a ton of friends. There was older people, younger people, there was people better than me, worse than me. I could win a couple of games, I could lose a couple of games, I could learn a few techniques, I could learn a few bits and pieces. But most importantly, I met some absolutely lovely people, and
mm,
almost the badminton side of it was secondary or tertiary to
yeah,
to actually what I was doing that evening.
Yeah.
So you don't have to get, full lycra'd up and sort of into cycling per se, but it's a lovely way of meeting people, getting some fresh air, getting fitter, earning that glass of wine, earning that bar of chocolate.
Yep.
It just makes you feel good. So this is what we wanted to make this podcast. I mean, we're going to go into a bit of a bit of nerdery a bit later on, but we wanted to make this completely inclusive. Every single person at every stage of their cycling life all has started from zero. Now, that zero might have been at
Yep.
5 years old, or it might be at 50 years old, but we have all started at zero. And always focus on what you want to get out of cycling, not what cycling wants to get out of you.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So that, I think that covers the kind of, I don't know. I'm not going to call it beginner, but the sort of the
The
someone
overview.
who's just got their bike or they're just getting back into it.
Yeah,
Short, sharp rides. Frequency rather than duration.
yeah,
And then as time goes on, you make your rides a little bit longer. You'll start to feel less pain in your bum the
yeah,
next morning.
yeah.
You'll probably feel a little bit more at home on the bike.
Mm.
I do like that one. Never put your bike away when you don't want to keep going. That's quite cool, actually.
Yeah,
And it makes absolute sense.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I guess the next thing is if you are, so you want to do your 100 miles,
Hmm.
or you want to do it and you want to do it more comfortably or quicker.
Yeah,
So you want to start increasing your fitness.
yeah.
And I guess there's a couple of things here, and I'm no expert in this by any means, by the way, but this is my sharing experience, I suppose.
Sorry, Peter, can I stop you there?
Mm.
You are.
I'm not. All right.
You, yeah, you've done it.
I've
You've
trained
been
myself
there.
to do big rides, but I'm not
Yes.
a fitness coach or a fitness
No,
expert. And
no.
some of the
And
stuff I've done.
yeah, and neither am I. That's the
Mm,
most important thing. I'm not a coach and I'm not a nutritionist and I'm not, I'm the same as you.
mm,
It's just I'm in the industry,
mm.
but but don't underestimate actually your knowledge of being able to go from um, you know, 0 to 100 miles.
Yeah,
Don't underestimate that. But
yeah,
we'll put a little bit of science into it.
yeah.
But this is very much on a amateur level. It's not in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
um, so I guess there's a few things. If you're going to do 100 miles, there is no
yeah.
substitute for time on the bike. So although we've just
Correct.
talked about, starting and shorter rides frequently,
Yeah,
if you want to do 100 miles sportif, doing 4 10K rides a week ain't
yeah.
going to get you there.
No.
There's no substitute for time on the bike. So
Yeah,
if you are going to do a longer ride, you kind of put together a little plan and just step up every week, add 5K to your ride or whatever it might be, and just get longer and longer.
yeah.
Because if you're going to do a 100K sportif, that's going to be, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 hours on the bike, depending
Hmm.
on how fast you are.
Yeah, and also dependent on the terrain.
This is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So time on the bike, definitely.
Hmm.
Um, the bit that I think people forget, but is super important, is
Hmm.
I don't think it matters if you're only riding for an hour or an hour and a half. But if you're going
Hmm.
any more than an hour and a half, you need to drink and you need
Yeah.
to eat.
Yes.
There's an argument to say you might not need to eat for maybe a couple of hours, but certainly if you're on your bike, you need to be taking on water and a lot
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, so now, if there are any nutritionalists, biologists, or actual training coaches out there that picks holes in what I'm about to say, please
yeah,
feel free in the comments. This is very sort
we
of
prefaced it by
basic.
saying we weren't experts. We were just,
Correct, correct. Um, but when you think about a squishy organic being, we are like a sort of four-stroke engine. So we've got a fuel and air mixture that goes into our body through our mouth and our nose. So there's a fuel and air mixture that goes inside. Inside the core of your body, you've got basically a really complex fuel injection system. And the top of your hip is like the piston. Your leg is like a conrod. And then through a crank and a gearbox, you are powering a driven wheel. Okay, so you are a squishy organic four-stroke engine in
Yeah.
very basic terms. And just
Or you're
like
more of
your
a wankle, really, aren't you? Sorry, I couldn't
oh,
help myself.
that's just now that is a car term, people. So for all you cyclists who are not petrol heads, that is a car term,
A
and
rotary engine is called a
it was a
wankle.
rotary engine, and it wasn't derogatory.
Couldn't help
Nice
myself
one,
there. Sorry.
nice one, Peter. Um, but just like your car engine, if you run out of fuel, it doesn't matter how powerful that engine is. If it hasn't got any fuel to burn, it stops. But
Yeah.
likewise, what you've got to think about is your car engine has got a radiator which has got liquids cycling around the engine to keep all the hot bits cool. That is what we call your coolant system in your car.
Mm.
Now, we also have a coolant system, but the problem with a squishy organic coolant system is the fact that it is a constantly leaking radiator,
Yep.
which is why you sweat. So your
Hmm.
radiator is leaking all the time. Now, where people go wrong is they just put water in their body, and people think
Yep.
that dehydration is a lack of water. But actually, and again, somebody comment if this isn't 100% correct, but my understanding is that electrolytes, so when you get these energy drinks that says it has electrolytes on board,
Hmm.
electrolytes, of which, oh, flipping heck, I'm pulling deep memories here. Your main ones: sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. I think they're the four key electrolytes that occur in the vast majority of your energy stuff. So we're a torque
This
dealers.
this is like doing a podcast with Wikipedia.
Oh, well, there you go. And well, yeah. What most of the information is incorrect. So it's,
Yeah.
yeah. So, joke, everybody. So they are your main electrolytes, and what you've got to the analogy that I give people when we're talking to folk about hydration and nutrition products in the shop is if you take a bucket and you put a hole in it at the bottom of the bucket. If you just put water into the bucket, it will just leak quite quickly out of the bottom of the hole, right? So
Hmm.
so the top of the bucket is your mouth that's going into your body, which is the main volume of the bucket, and the hole in the bottom of the bucket is like a sweat gland. It's a pore that the water
Yeah.
is just literally going through. Now, that is a form of dehydration, which is as you're putting the water in the top, so in your mouth, all that's happening if there's no electrolytes on board is that it can't be pulled into the bloodstream to allow you to cool down. You will just either sweat it out or pee it out really quickly. And that is your first sign of dehydration.
Hmm.
Now, take the bucket and fill it with Oasis or sponges or something like that. Hashtag
Yep.
need a sponge.
Yes.
Water goes into the top of the bucket. It's still got the same size hole at the bottom of the bucket, But because the water is absorbed by the sponge and the oasis, it holds on to that fluid for much longer and
Yeah.
you get less leakage out the bottom. Does that make sense?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And that is why it's so important to mix your water in your water bottle with an electrolyte based mix,
Yeah.
because that is then going to allow the body to absorb those fluids and send it around the body to aid cooling
Yeah.
and keep you hydrated. But in addition to that, so that's to try and plug holes in the leaking radiator analogy. But in addition to that, you still need fuel. And fuel in a human body, the fastest way of converting fuel into energy is through carbohydrates,
Hmm.
and fast burning carbohydrates as opposed to proteins. And again, Rosie, she's a biologist, so she'll be able to go into that much more detail. But the point is that carbohydrates are a faster way of your body being able to burn. And the average human being who is working under quite heavy load wants to be around 30 grams of carbohydrates per hour in that region. So, yeah, if you're on a 2 hour ride, having around a litre, 750 to a litre of electrolyte mixed fluids, particularly if you're working at quite a high level of exertion, so turbo training, for example, I will never do a 45-minute to an hour turbo trainer session without around 750 milliliters of water with an electrolyte mix in it, because
Okay.
you're working at a very hot, high level of intensity. And I'll probably put a gel in my body first to make sure that I've got the fuel to be able to maximize that training session. So yeah, fuel, hydration, massively important.
I think, one of the challenges it is there's a lot of mixed messages out there, and I think some people are quite confused and stuff. Um, I would one of my top tips would be if you've got two bike bottle carriers on your bike,
Yeah.
I always have one bottle with electrolytes in it
Hmm.
and one bottle with just water in it.
Right.
And the reason I do that is especially if it's a hot day, it gives you the option of squirting water on your face or cleaning your hands or whatever you need to do. And sometimes if you're on a bike ride for a long time, by the time you've had 4 bottles of electrolyte supplement, all you want is some fresh water. So I would that's my personal choice.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing, from a gel's point of view,
Yeah.
if I ran the marathon again when I ran it in 2009, I didn't know anything about nutrition when I was doing
Hmm.
exercise, and
Yeah.
I survived not 3 hours 57 with water and Lucozade isotonic, because they gave that every sort of 5 miles. That's all I
Yeah.
had.
Yeah.
But if I'd have had some gels and
Yeah.
had some nutrition, I would have ran faster than that because I bombed
Yes.
massively.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so again, you kind of need to, maybe if you're on a really longer ride, don't pump yourself full of gels. Try and have other things as well. I don't know,
Yeah.
some flapjack or
Yes.
something
Yeah.
that's not sweet and sugary and horrible.
Yeah. And something on your tummy. That's the
Yeah,
thing, is
yeah,
that if you're constantly taking gels, yeah, your body can absorb that energy
mm,
really quickly.
mm,
But you're quite right. You get, and it is a term. It is called what we call palate fatigue. And your analogy that you used with regards to a bottle of water and a mix. Um,
mm,
Now, what I tend to do, and it is very much dependent on the temperature that you're riding in, and also how much you sweat. So
mm,
this is the other thing that people don't take into account. Rosie, my dear lady wife, she runs cold all the time. It's the only
mm.
reason why she married me, is the fact that I'm like a radiator. So it could be minus 20 outside and I'd still be in shorts and t-shirt. the thought of having exercise brings me out sweating. Whereas Rosie could do 100 miles in Cyprus and virtually not break a sweat. So an individual's sweat rate also dictates how their speed of dehydration as well. So if
Yeah.
you're not a heavy sweater, Peter, just because of your base core temperature, if you're not a heavy sweater, then you won't need the amount of electrolyte that I would need as a heavy sweater. But we're getting into
Mm.
real depths of detail here.
I think I think I think you try it out and stuff because other things I've done because you can get electrolyte supplement or electrolyte powder to put in your water bottles, and you can
Yeah,
get energy powder to put in your water bottles,
yeah, and
or you can mix
combos
the two
of the
together.
two. Yeah, and the
Yeah,
no,
I
no,
was going to say, or you.
yeah, no, don't mix them. So you either are looking for always get, don't try and make a blend.
Mm,
So I mean, this is what we love about talk, is that they do hydration products, so very heavy concentrations of electrolytes, and it tastes a little vile. But I needed that 2 or 3 times on the Marmot because it was 32 degrees and I was 10 hours in the saddle, and I had to get more electrolytes on board. And that worked an absolute treat. But then there are
mm,
also times where you don't want any more electrolytes; you just want energy. So sometimes, sort of, depending on where you are on the ride and at what time you're on the ride, you can. Uh, but as I say, we're getting into very deep detail now.
yeah, I think maybe the biggest takeaway is you know you need to do this in your training. You need to practice and try out different products, find out what works for you.
Yeah, yeah,
I've got certain energy products that I can use and are
yeah,
great, and some I really really can't.
sure.
One of the things that I absolutely swear by is, and again, I don't use electrolytes or gels if I'm going out for anything under like an hour and a half. Because one of the other things is, and again, there's a school of thought here that if you're doing cycling to lose weight or to that there is an argument that you want to try and let your body burn some of its reserves because that's kind of why you're doing it. But one of the things I was going to say is when I've come back from a big ride or if I've had a particularly hard turbo session, I'm a big fan of recovery drinks.
Yes,
Um, and or it's either recovery drinks or you need to eat something within about 15 minutes of the effort finishing.
yeah.
You need to get some protein inside you.
Tin of
So
baked beans.
well, yeah. I mean, I'll normally have like I use SIS products, so Rego or something like that.
Mm, mm,
You make yourself an energy, a recovery shake
mm,
in a water bottle, and then you have that, and you have that within 15 minutes.
mm.
And for me, what that helps my body do is it helps your muscles recover more quickly, so
Yeah,
you're less likely to get those achy dead legs the next day.
yeah,
So I'm a big fan of those. But I don't think we're now in the kind of middle part of the spectrum, aren't we? We've gone from kind of beginners just getting out and just riding your bike.
mm,
Now I'm pushing on a little bit more,
mm.
but the next level um, is riding your bike on the road on its own enough, especially if you want to do something, and that's where something like a turbo trainer or a Peloton bike or a Watt bike or something like that
Yeah,
is quite helpful because, well, one, you can ride it no matter what the weather outside. That's
yeah,
why I always put my bike on the turbo trainer in the winter.
yeah,
But I always find those bikes, and I've only experienced really turbo trainers and Watt bikes,
mm,
is that they give you the opportunity for maybe half an hour, 45 minutes to real intensive, hard work. And again, I don't think the podcast we're doing that is long enough to talk about all the different techniques that you can
no,
use.
yeah,
But the short and the long of it is if you do some work on a turbo trainer, when you come out of the winter and you come into getting on your bike, your conditioning in your legs and your body and stuff is that's how I've done all of my big challenges. Is I've just
Yeah.
spent a ton of time on a turbo trainer.
Yeah. It's a consistent effort, and the thing about being on a turbo trainer is that you are pedaling all the time.
Mm.
You don't stop for 45 minutes to an hour. You do not stop putting pressure through the pedals.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a 45-minute to an hour session on a turbo train is probably worth about 2.25 hours on the road, because if anybody is really honest with themselves, the amount of freewheeling, descending and just taking pressure off the pedals themselves when you're out on the road on 2.25 hour ride is quite a lot. Whereas when you are putting a constant effort through the pedals on the turbo trainer, you are constantly working hard, and it sustains it sustains that muscular load that really improves cardiovascular performance when you're working on an aerobic session. What we call around 65-75% of peak threshold is an aerobic session. When we're working at around 85-95% of anaerobic of aerobic threshold, you're working at very high levels, and that's really good fun. Hard, but really good fun.
Yeah.
And then you're moving into what we call anaerobic levels, which is around 105-110% of your peak aerobic level, and that's where you're starting to your body is now not converting the energy and the oxygen into power. You're starting to build lactic acid within the muscle, and that's where you start to feel that burn through the muscles, and that's when you're starting to work in an anaerobic level. And then when you're on a prescribed training course, like I did through Trainer Road, you're then moving into what we call VO2 max, which is at the peak of what your cardiovascular system is able to sustain power. And that is almost, and I'm not going to sugarcoat this, it is planned as flipping out, my mouth's gone all funny.
Asphyxiation.
Yeah, you are, when you do a heavy 120% interval session at your peak VO2 max level, you are pretty much suffocating yourself. And there are times where, I mean, Rosie once, when I was training for the Marmot, actually came upstairs really concerned because the noises I was making upstairs on the turbo trainer. She was actually worried. She thought that somebody had got in and was actually suffocating me, because you're working to such a high level. And that's the thing, you've got to if you're wanting to be as fast and as strong for massive endurance efforts, you've got to work on all those three energy levels: your aerobic conditioning, your anaerobic conditioning, and your VO2 max conditioning. And that's what makes you very strong as a rider.
And I guess if there's someone listening to this that's just starting out and they think, oh, blimey, that sounds a bit serious and stuff. My simple analogy, or not analogy, but simple thing is, you can go out on your bike for a bimble. And I sometimes quite like going out for a bimble. What I mean by a bimble is I'm just riding my bike. It's more about being out in the air and the fresh air and the scenery, and I'm not really trying too hard. And when I get to a hill, I might have to really put an effort in because I've got to get up a hill. But other than that, I'm not thinking about putting an effort in. The next step is, if you want to get fitter and you want to be able to go faster or longer, the simple thing you have to do is you have to think about putting effort in. And you have to think, right, okay, instead of cycling along at 13 miles an hour, I'm going to cycle along at 18 miles an hour, and you put the effort in.
Yeah.
And it's that simple. And the longer you can do that, the fitter you'll get.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I go out with Dan together, we'll at times in the ride we'll cycle side by side and we'll have a chat, and at other times we'll do on and through. So we'll draft each other and we'll sit there, and I'll sit on the front and pin 25 miles an hour, and then when I'm tired, I'll drop off and he'll
Yeah.
go on, and we'll really really try and go as fast as we can until one of
Yeah.
us blows up,
Yes.
and that's how you get fitter.
Yeah. It is. It is. In fact, I was.
And unfortunately, there's no other way.
Yeah.
You cycle until it hurts or you throw up. That's how you
Yes.
get fitter.
That. Yeah. And. But ultimately, I think, as your point really is that it doesn't matter whether you're at the beginning stage, the intermediate stage, or the advanced stage. We're certainly not going to get into the pro stage because that those guys are just in a diff. I mean, that is raw talent and raw genetics, right?
Yeah.
Where we're at the moment is just you, me, and the gatepost. Yeah, this is your point, really, Peter,
Yeah.
which was anybody can run a marathon. Well, I'm no superstar. I'm not a genetic athlete at all. But I worked really blooming hard for 7 months to go and do the Marmot, and I enjoyed every minute of being on my bike, including the dark places where I even said a naughty
Yeah.
word to Steve. And I don't say naughty words that often, but I, at the top of the, getting onto the steep section of the Glibier, Steve said to me, we were about seven hours in at this point, and we were approaching 2,600 meters elevation, right? It's 2,600 meters, 2.6 kilometers
Mm,
above sea level. And,
yeah.
we were gasping. We were absolutely gasping. And that's after 7 months of training.
Yeah.
And Steve looked across at me and said, Paul, mate, I think I'm going to have to walk. And I just looked at him and I said, we're not on a flipping walk. Get on and push, as in get on and keep pedaling. And then, and then he disappeared off into the distance, the git.
You
But
big
that's the
wuss.
point.
Yeah.
It's one of those. You're working to such a high level that that you need that inspiration. You need that hard word from a friend that you trust and respect, because we're both hurting at that point. But it's wonderful.
Yeah. It is. It's a bit sad, but so I mean, there are lots of different ways of, and again, we're nearly out of time on this podcast. I mean, when you start getting into the realms of, right, I'm going to buy myself a turbo trainer.
Yeah.
Oh my days! So we probably need to do a podcast just on turbo trainers, actually.
Yeah.
Because you can spend from a few £100 to several £1,000s on a turbo trainer.
Yeah.
And then whether or not they link to the different platforms that are available, like Zwift or Trainer Road or whatever it might be. So there are plenty of platforms out there to help you get fitter. You still have to have the motivation to get on your bike and do a session every night or every other night. They don't. Unfortunately, no one's come up with a way of magicking that one.
No.
So it's still hard. It's hard work. It's not particularly pleasant. It can be a bit dull. It's not as nice as, you don't get all of the emotional receptors firing off that you do when you're cycling down a beautiful Alp or something. You're in your garage, dripping with sweat and stuff.
Yes.
So there's plenty of those. But yeah, we should probably have a go at maybe doing a thing on different turbo trainers. Rollers. Have you done rollers? I've always wanted to be cool at rollers, but I know that I'd be the guy on YouTube that basically falls off and smashes his face on the desk.
Genuinely, Peter. I mean, the great thing about rollers. So one of our employees is a husband and wife team. So two of our employees are the husband-wife team. So we've got Keith, who's been with me for many, many years. We mentioned him on the podcast a couple of times. He is
Yeah.
Mr. Encyclopedia. If you ever wanted to, I think he dreams part numbers. Okay, it's like, you know, the Matrix, where the guy's got all the sort of ones and zeros, sort of that is Keith basically on Shimano
Yeah.
and SRAM part numbers. Well, Natalie, his wife, she must actually get on the podcast. She's a Commonwealth
Yeah.
triathlete. Okay, so she was in the
Right.
Glasgow
Yeah.
in the Glasgow 2014 Commonwealth Games, and so she's raced a number of world triathlon series, and she is just lovely. And I forgot my point. What were we talking about? What's the point?
Rollers.
Rollers. Yeah. Oh, flipping heck. I'm out of wine. That's a problem. Sorry, folks.
Yeah.
So she did roller sessions, and one of the things that she absolutely loved about roller sessions was it was a full body workout. And I think that's what people don't realise about
Yeah.
rollers is that you work in everything. You work in your core, your upper body, your lower body. You work in your cardiovascular system, your muscular system. You work in absolutely everything on rollers. So anybody who is a big roller fan and does rollers really well, keep going. It's absolutely brilliant. But frankly, I've never been on them because I will fall off and I will join you with that person on YouTube who ends up with a collarbone broken. I can't go to work. Yes.
Yeah. What I mean, I know you can start on them in the doorway and stuff, but I watched a video
No.
once on a guy cycled up to his rollers on his road bike, did a track stand next to the rollers,
Yeah.
bunny hopped onto them, started
Yes.
cycling, and then bunny hopped off and finished. I'm
Yes.
like,
Yes.
no, that's not going to happen.
No.
I'm not going to do that.
Yes. Mega kudos
So
to
yeah,
that
so
guy.
yeah, exactly. So I think one of the things that maybe this is how we can finish off the session is, for me, the longer the rides I did on my bike,
Yeah.
the more inclined to do challenges. I don't know, my first 50 miles, my first 100 miles, whatever it might be. Then I did a sportive. It was those things that got me to love cycling.
Yes.
Those were the things that got me hooked on cycling.
Yes.
Those are the things that then got me into bike technology. And, you know, you do your first 100 miles on your first bike and then you think, oh, you know, my carbon frame would be nice. And then you start, for me, that's where the addiction began, really.
Yeah.
Is you increase the distance and the complexity of the riding. You know, you maybe go and purposefully find a hill to cycle up. When you first start riding, you avoid all hills at all costs.
Yeah.
But suddenly you think, oh, there's a hill over there. I'm going to go and cycle up it. And that, for me, that's where my deep love of cycling came from, is the challenging yourself, working through it, researching how to get fitter, what you should eat on your bike, how to make your bike better. That for me, that's the full circle thing, right? So far in Cycle Sunday, we've talked about the bikes and the technology, and this podcast's been more about the squishy organic thing that sits on them.
Yes.
But that's the really important bit, especially when you've got a really super expensive high-end road bike coming and you're not actually getting out on your bike because you're working too hard.
Yes.
Mr. Greaves.
Yes. Yeah, but that's why you're getting a really high-end, expensive bike, because it's going to buy speed.
Yeah. That means I'll be able to go and do Von 2, no worries.
No, yeah. But no, I think you've hit the nail on the head and summarised that well. All sport is about human spirit. When all's said and done,
Yeah.
You know, whether you whether you go to a badminton club and have a bit of a knockabout to start, and then you get your first carbon bat and you start playing somebody slightly better than you, and then you start getting into feather shuttlecocks instead of nylon shuttlecocks, and your game starts to improve. Then you improve your trainers, then you improve your clothes. It's all about this evolution of the human spirit wanting to be better for ourselves than the person we were yesterday. That is what the human spirit is about. And there's lots of people who that progression of what they want out of their own human spirit is more about the people that they meet. So if you always stay that person who's bought their first hybrid bike and they only ever do 5 kilometers 2 to 3 times a week, but absolutely love the mental well-being. I know there's a massive jive about that side. It's so important. But just enjoys the mental well-being of the people that they speak to and the people that they meet, but all you do on your bike, on your 2, 3, 4, 500-pound hybrid bike, is do 3 times a week, meeting people and enjoying company whilst on your bike. That is equally as important as the next person who has got all the latest technology, who does 100 miles before breakfast, goes to work and does 100 miles at night. You two people at each end of the spectrum are as important as each other. Get out of cycling what you need to get out of cycling for your own human spirit. I think that would be my summary.
Mate, amen to that, sir. What a great way to finish. That was a good one.
Yeah. Well, we enjoyed it. Everybody else who listened
all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. I know. So, guys, let us know what have you done? Any challenges? Have you kind of gone through a fitness program? The joys of the internet as well. If you want to run a marathon or you want to cycle 100 miles, Google it and you'll find fitness plans and training plans and stuff that you can follow. There's so much stuff out there. We're not telling you how to do it. We're just giving you some insight into how, some of the things that we've encountered in our time on that lovely thing that we call a bicycle.
Yes.
But I hope you enjoyed that one, guys. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast. If you're watching this on Apple, then you can head over to Apple and give us a rating. I think that helps us get up the list. We're still learning this whole podcast thing. And if you're watching it on YouTube, make sure you subscribe.
Yes.
But I'm going to draw that one to a close. But Mr. Bowker, it's been great seeing you again. Take care. And hope you enjoyed that one. But I've been Pete Greaves.
I've been Paul Bowker.
Hey, we'll see you on the next one, guys. Ride safe.
Ride safe, everybody.